Hello everybody, my name is Jonathan Reeves from Innovative Vectorworks BIM. Today I'm going to share a Lumion and Vectorworks tutorial with you that I prepared for one of my projects that I revisited. And really this is honestly the second time I've tried Lumion. I've only had the trial for a while. I had one quick test with some messing around with the landscape, but I just really thought I'd share this tutorial with you to show the kind of quality of the output I produced and how easy it is to use. So first of all, we're going to start off with the Vectorworks project. It's for a contemporary sort of modern barn, if you like, and it was a really cool project, all modelled up in Vectorworks, using the BIM method of modelling, sort of walls, windows, doors, and a few sort of custom modelled extrusions. So Vectorworks is such a powerful modelling program, and it really is brilliant for developing your ideas. And you can see that the OpenGL rendering is actually pretty good. So when I'm kind of, presenting to the client early stage, I'll often use this kind of technology to show them the designs. But there does become a certain point where you want to take it to the next level. So there's quite a few different options, and today we're going to explore the Lumion Live Sync option, which is now basically a plugin for Vectorworks. You can see it's on the 3D tool palette, and all I do is click on to launch Lumion, and immediately, as soon as I kind of click, it will launch whatever Lumion version you have. Now I've got the trial of Lumion 10 at the moment, so I'm just kind of opening this up, and we'll see how we go. Okay, so our Vectorworks model is now basically open directly in Lumion. It looks like we've kind of appeared inside the building. So let's kind of just pan back out. And again, you'll know that all of these live rendering programs, real-time rendering programs, use the same gaming keys. So the WASD keys will be the traditional ones. So I think the first thing that I'm going to try and do is basically move the landscape a little bit, just to adjust that. Because my building is, as you can see, set down within the landscape. And the idea of the design there really was just to kind of nestle it into the landscape a bit more. It was actually designed on a pretty flat site, so it needed some way to kind of ground the building. So the very sort of next thing that I'm going to do is basically just click onto my materials and just start to replace some of those in the model. And you can see I'm just kind of just finding my way around and sort of seeing how I go, and just drag some grass onto the grass plane there. Let's kind of have a look at the various sort of landscapes and so on. There's quite a few different types of ground and grasses that ship with Lumion, so definitely recommend you try some of these out. That's quite a cool one. We'll try this one maybe just for now. And let's have a look at what else we can do. So when you are ready, you click save, and then we can go potentially off to the place objects. But before we do that, I would just like to sort my glass out. So I'm going to click onto that glass. So by selecting the glass in the model, you'll see we immediately get the glass that came through from Vectorworks. And if we click back, we'll be onto the Lumion glasses library. And again, as you would expect with these kind of software, there's a pretty good built-in library of glass. And all of these things are pretty adjustable in terms of things like reflectivity, sort of transparency, and those kind of aspects. So just kind of keep moving around the model. It's pretty easy to navigate around. Do remember to click the tick. And the other thing that we can do is go and now place some objects. So this is definitely good fun. We'll go to place mode, and we'll start to place a few trees and plants. So very much like sort of Enscape, Twinmotion, the other real-time rendering softwares, Lumion has a really good library of plants and trees. Now there is a pretty big library of these things, and the quality of them is really, really good actually, as you'll see later on in the video. So it's super easy to kind of place those. I do quite like the sort of crosshair, the accuracy that gives me for placing. That certainly helps when you're doing sort of perspective placement, just to kind of get things lined up potentially. Because sometimes in 3D it's a bit tricky. Just watch that. I think I've placed one up on top of the roof there for a second. So it sort of snaps like other 3D software to the surface that you actually pull out on. So yeah, with all these bits of software, you've got to kind of take a while to get to know which plants and which ones are the appropriate ones. So now I'm going to go to the brush mode. And again, very similar to Twinmotion this aspect, I'm basically going to adjust the density and the size of my brush. And that's pretty dense actually, so we can kind of always change that, and I can change the individual trees, just sort of really spray in some sort of virtual forest quite rapidly. and you can see it's quite nice, quite easy to work quite rapidly with this brush tool. So when you get to the point when you're happy, we'll basically click onto the tick to confirm. Let's have a quick look at the other placement modes. This is a particularly nice one where you can place in a line, and what you can do here is you can place a number of different objects as well. So you can add a few different options here. I'm just going to go for this one. When you're ready, let's just sort of move the view a little bit. So we'll tick, click here, draw a little line across there, and basically it's really nice. It just places the plants or the objects along that line. You can introduce a few things like randomness, size, density, cool things like rotation and the number of them. So really easy to make sort of lines of trees, avenues of trees, or things like hedges as well. This is the nice little mode that I've discovered. It's called the cluster mode. This is really nice. Again, it places a little random cluster depending on the types of objects you choose. So a little randomized cluster of that particular type of object. So I'm just kind of looking to sort of try and get this scene looking a little bit natural. Yeah, I'm just sort of trying out some of these things. As I say, this is really only the second time that I've actually used Lumion. And in a way, I kind of wanted to make this tutorial, you know, without too much experience, just to show you perhaps potentially how easy it was to use. I was thinking about making it with my very first try. May well still do that, but obviously the very first try, you know, you're certainly learning where things are and just sort of how to find your way around. So for those of you who are pretty new to real-time rendering software like Lumion, Twinmotion, and maybe even Enscape, the three options really for Vectorworks for sure, I really recommend you just sort of have a little play and then go for it on a real project. So that's sort of just enjoying using the brush tool here to spray these around. Let's just keep exploring some of the libraries. Yeah, it's not until you try that you kind of realise whether you like something or not. I'm a little bit far away, so I might kind of, you know, get the camera down a bit and let's look at this a little bit more from eye level. Now, one of the things with Lumion that I've noticed compared to Twinmotion is that the preview itself, while it's pretty good on screen, is quite different to what you see at the end of the day when you get a final render. Now that is no bad thing, because the renders that you'll see later on that I get from Lumion are actually extremely nice once it's done a bit of post-processing on the image. But you know, the rendering sort of preview that we're working in isn't quite as good as the final output. That's one thing that I do like with Twinmotion. Pretty much with a good graphics card, what you see on screen is what you get out, so you can really do your fine-tuning, particularly for lighting and interiors and so on as well. But you will see, as we'll sort of show later, the final quality of output that I did manage to achieve in this video was really, really good, and I was really impressed with it. So it's definitely fun. Now, you know, this kind of project is always really fun just to sort of mess around, perhaps try them out in, you know, different types of environments and just see how you go. So let's go ahead and save where we got to, and just sort of save where we've got to so far. It's always recommended as you go through your project, just keep saving every once in a while. But so far Lumion seems really stable and I've had no problems with crashes as we speak. So we'll save this. Okay, so we'll just make a little folder, Lumion renders, and let's just save this contemporary barn. We'll kind of just go ahead and save that one. Spelled contemporary wrong. It's quite easy to mistype. On the Mac I could right click and correct the spelling, so on my PC that doesn't happen. But there we go, we've saved the project. Now while we're here, we'll take a quick look at the benchmarks. You can see here is a really nice little kind of statistics area where you can really kind of see what your computer's running. And there is a really good benchmark that is worth running at the beginning just to see how your computer and processor and graphics card setup will actually run the Lumion software. Okay, so we've gone into basically the image mode, and you can see already when you look at the preview you get some slightly different type of rendering. So I'm going to go on basically and pre-apply some of the standard custom effects. So here we are in realistic mode, and immediately you can see the viewport is quite different to where I was in the preview and the working mode. And this is really nice. You can select some real skies. There's a bunch of sort of really cool polygon skies that are pre-built here. And the good thing with the skies is they're sort of, you know, obviously got HDRI component in them, and that gives you very nice sort of image-based lighting. So yeah, really just sort of playing around to see which one I like the look of. Let's have a go on this one. And each image, or each sky rather, gives you quite a different type of lighting. So yeah, here we can see we're moving around in the viewport. That's the viewport quality. As soon as we kind of pause and we kind of let go, stay where we are for a minute, it will automatically do the update with the final quality rendering. So when we're ready, if we would like to, we can simply click on the little camera icon down on the dock and we can store a frame. So let's click on that. That's really easy. I do like the little flash that you get when you take a photo almost. So let's have a look at maybe the daytime sort of presets on this one. They're really, really nice. As I say, let's have a little kind of swap out of the view. I also do like the sort of, if you like, the vision aids where you can kind of see the, the rule of thirds lines as you move around the view. I think that really helps you compose the shot. Navigating around, as I say, is pretty straightforward, just like any of the other real-time rendering softwares, and that's cool. So really nice, consistent. If you know one, you'll know the others. So what we'll do, we'll go back to build mode. We've got a couple of images saved, but let's kind of crack on with our model. Just spotted that I need to sort my glass out on this side. I think I had a few different types of glass in the Vectorworks model, so they've all come through. So we'll go for a nicer Lumion glass to replace that. And we'll do a bit of work on the context and the landscape around here. So we'll click tick, we'll go back to object placement mode, and we'll basically go back to the nature tab, and then we bring up all the different sort of libraries. And we're going to just drag in a few more of the plants. Whoops, I just clicked onto the sun. As you can see, that's very easy to adjust the sun direction and the sort of azimuth or sun height and angle. So that's always really good, just to adjust that, just to get some sort of maybe some nice shadows of those trees falling onto the building. Always looks cool. We can also select a landscape preset just to give us a different kind of background in the landscape as well. So yeah, let's just kind of keep playing around. We'll go back to place mode and we'll kind of keep dragging in a few more plants. Now that's one thing that I would say is a little bit awkward. Sometimes you're trying to work and actually you click on the menus by accident. I've noticed I've done that a few times. So here I can go to delete, and all the objects that I've highlighted in red are just simply deletable by clicking on that little icon that appears. So that's pretty straightforward in terms of deleting. You don't hit the delete key though, like you might expect. So that was definitely something I had to get used to. Now moving things around is pretty straightforward. You click on them, you do have to go into a special move mode, and then you can kind of move them around in the different sort of base plates that you would expect. Again, a little bit different with Twinmotion. You can move, you can rotate, and you can scale just by switching through with the shortcuts, which I really do like with the Twinmotion software. But let's just keep dragging in some of these plants. We'll kind of drag in like a little cluster. Only problem with the clusters is they're a bit unpredictable. They will place things where you don't want them. As you can see, I've got a couple of plants placed in front of the building there that I didn't really want them to be in that particular position. So I might need to go and tidy those up a bit later and delete them. Okay, so we'll just keep working and we'll keep placing a few of the different sort of trees and plants. You can see, as I say, the library with Lumion is excellent. There's always a bit of debate about, which of these software has the best library. I'm going to leave that for you guys to decide. I really do like the new Twinmotion library. I think that's amazing in 2020, but it is actually really, really good. The Lumion library is really good as well. You're just going to find your way around kind of, so here we're just dragging in some leaves. We can see that's really nice little bit of detail. So yeah, you've got to really explore all these libraries. Let's have a look at some of the rocks as well, and that's kind of cool. Yeah, I like the way they've got a little preview of a man there. That's good. Same as Twinmotion, just so you can kind of gauge the scale, because you can't always do that. We'll just go to flowers and put some of those in. Always makes it look nice if you have a little bit of colour, sort of spot colour, particularly sort of just to kind of draw the attention to the eye. Makes it really easy to help you sort of think about your composition of the image. It's like kind of cool, just have a little bit of yellow here. You can always adjust that later if we don't like it. But yeah, I recommend, when you're working, you just work quite fluidly, particularly on a scene like this where we're just having a bit of fun. And let's just add a little bit more detail, some more plants there, which is really, really lovely. So yeah, just definitely exploring the libraries is one of those things that you just kind of get into and see which plants you actually like to use. And it won't be until you do final quality renders that you can really see how they come out. So here we're back into the render mode, and you can see, let's just store that image. That's a really nice image. Okay, so let's go and work on the other side of the building a little bit more. I thought I'd like to show you another aspect to Lumion, just the same as Twinmotion. We can work on the landscape. So really easy to do again. We can kind of get a nice sort of sculpting brush. We can kind of just raise up some sort of hills here. Let's adjust the brush size a little bit and just sort of basically paint and spray. It's very fluid. One thing I really do is love is when you basically spray the landscape, you'll see that the trees and the grass and the plants that I've moved actually kind of refit themselves once you raise the landscape up to the new sort of height of the landscape. That's a really cool feature. So yeah, that's very, very nice. No, I do like that a lot. So it just means that you can kind of keep working in any sequence. You don't need to sort of do the landscape first, then bring the trees in. You can bring the trees in on the flat side, and then you can kind of just adjust them. So I'm just keen to kind of try and get these two grasses to match, both the foreground and the background grass, just so we get a bit less transition. Okay, so let's carry on and take a few more images. So we'll click onto that aerial view there and just adjust the camera and just kind of tweak the view a little bit more. So you can see it's really easy just sort of moving around. Use right click on the mouse just to pan the view. Let's change the focal length. That's the camera sort of focal length, to zoom in and zoom out and get down a bit more eye level. That's a kind of nice view with the foreground of those trees there. Always looks good actually if you go down quite low to eye level. We'll try and get that ready. So let's click store camera. So I do love the flash of the camera as we do that. Let's go to custom style. For this one we'll go for more of an overcast image. And I really do like some of the overcast renders that you see. Not always just the bright sunny day, sort of typical sunny day architecture. Sometimes it's really good to go for a different style. So as we move around, one thing you will notice, if you have some landscape, it will actually move up and down in the landscape area. Well, rather than down, it definitely moves up as I go up the hill, but it does maintain that height as I move forward. So that's a really nice shot there. We'll just kind of get that almost front elevation shot. And we'll have a little play around with the movie mode at this point. So what we'll do is we'll click onto the movie button and we'll click record. Now this enables us essentially to basically live record as we're moving around. So we click plus to record a keyframe, just like you would in say Twinmotion. Move forward a bit, let's move across a little bit, let's click the plus button, and you can see the keyframes being added down below on the dock down below. That's really easy to do. Click plus, takes a nice little photo each time. Let's frame up that final image there, click plus, and let's preview the image. So when we play, we can just sort of play through the little clip that we've created. Panning across always looks really nice. And we'll click tick to save that first clip. So that's cool. Now let's carry on working a little bit more. Now we kind of know our way around the interface a bit more. Let's scale that grass up and down, see if that helps. We'll kind of go forward a bit more. And I'm keen to get some sort of more realistic grass in this foreground. So we'll go to the 3D grass, and you can see there's a bunch of different sort of 3D grasses. We can just drag those onto the grass area there and apply those. And this kind of grass gives you a lot of 3D detail. You'll see individual blades when you get close enough. So it really does look a lot more realistic than just a sort of flat texture of grass. And you can see we can review our images. And once they've kind of re-rendered, very, very nice. Much more sort of detail in the foreground and the rendering. So yeah, that looks really cool. Now, of course, this rendering does depend a bit on the graphics card. I've got a great graphics card on this this PC. It's an RTX 2080 Ti with 11 gigabytes. Probably one of the best graphics cards you can buy. So, you know, if you're really serious about your rendering, you really want to go for a top graphics card. A CPU is obviously also important, but the graphics card, the GPU, for these real-time rendering softwares is the key component. So for this particular shot, we're going to go for a night view. You can see I've basically just gone to realistic. I've chosen Aurora Borealis as the sky result, and that's absolutely beautiful, really stunning sort of background there. So let's go ahead and one more time always save what we're doing as we get to regular points in the project, and we'll go back to render mode. And I think what we'll do, we'll just review the animation. Let's perhaps let's have another quick play on this one, see how that's looking. Okay, so I think we'll go back to our build mode and we'll do a little bit of work on the other side of the building. So let's kind of just pan across as we go up and over and just kind of have a little look around this side. Let's spin around. So that side's looking really nice and we've got some nice background in the view there. And we haven't really done much work on the rear elevation here. This is where you've got the living areas and those lovely balconies with those beautiful kind of bedrooms looking out onto the landscape. I was really pleased with the design here. By the way, the wooden building there is actually a table tennis sort of pavilion with a little office above. So the client on this particular project wanted, is a very keen table tennis player, so wanted to kind of separate out that function which was specific to their family requirements with a little glazed link in between. So you can see I'm just kind of placing a little bit more detail in the foreground. So for this particular image, it always looks great if you kind of just place a few different types of plants into the foreground there, mix them up a little bit just to make it look a bit more natural. And, you know, just kind of keep working on, let's get some more leaves, perhaps just into that area there, just to try and make the image look a bit less photorealistic in terms of, you know, kind of absolutely perfect. There's always going to be a few dead leaves or things lying around. So let's go back to our plants and we'll choose some flowers again. So slightly more kind of tended bit of the garden, a little bit wilder in the foreground, in the front, and then some nice sort of plants here just to create a bit of a story about perhaps how the garden might actually look. You can see on the flowers there really is you know, multiple pages. So there's multiple tabs within the Lumion libraries. So there is a really big library here. It's definitely going to take a bit of time to explore all of this. Let's get a couple of rocks into the foreground. Just be careful you don't hit onto the actual sort of dock and change the tool settings as I did earlier in the tutorial. Here we can see some of the shortcuts that you can learn, and those are kind of quite useful in terms of actually changing things like the views and different settings as well. So I'm pretty happy with that now. I think what we'll do is we'll kind of get some nice trees into this scene. So I'm going to go for the really realistic trees. And when I put one here, you can see that's lovely because I get some nice lighting and shadow onto the building. And that always looks good if you get a bit of shadow into the scene, onto the building. Let's get another one over this side. With a bit of luck, when we move forward again, we can kind of frame up this image with some really nice foreground trees. So yeah, that's looking good. Let's go back and let's click save onto that particular image. So I do like the guidelines that pop up. As I say, those are things that you will be familiar with as a photographer if you're kind of using high-end cameras. That does help a lot. So I think for this one, we'll go for a different time of day, more of a dawn type effect. So you can see the light is quite orange or sort of pinky almost to reflect that sort of dawn period of the time. And we'll just adjust the focal length a bit. I'm keen to keep the foreground of those trees and plants. And I'm just kind of swinging the view around very slightly to see if I can get my perspective lines looking a little bit more vertical, but that does look lovely. Once it's, you know, the preview is re-rendered with the final quality of the render, that's excellent. So when we're happy, we'll click onto the render photos button. I'm just going to render out this particular sort of photo set, as it were, and we'll go for you know, decent sort of level of print level quality. So let's just kind of create ourselves a nice little folder here, and we'll kind of go for it and click save. Basically, Lumion will start to render. Let's just type in a file name rather. So we'll just call that barn render. That's fine. Click save, and off it goes. You can see it starts to render in samples, and it's really interesting just sitting back and watching the Lumion render as it progresses. I do quite like that about Lumion. Twinmotion probably, you know, is a bit faster in some ways, but you don't get perhaps the preview that you're getting in Lumion, so it's quite fascinating just to sit back and kind of watch it do its thing. So all these different samples, you know, I'm not really sure what they're doing or how it's working, but what it obviously does is composite them all together to create a really nice realistic image when it's finished. So as I say, the images take a little bit longer, but in my view the quality is good and they're well worthwhile. Okay, so that one is nearly finished now. You can see we're on the final sample, and now we've moved on to rendering photo 2. And again, same process really, just sort of running through some of the samples. And you can see one thing that I do quite like is just to have a quick look at my NZXT cam, which is a monitoring program, and you can see what the GPU is doing. You can see it's pretty high end. We're using sort of 79% of the GPU at this stage, and even up to 98%, but not much CPU. So it is mainly graphics card, as we've said before. It's quite interesting to look at that, and you can see it's barely using half the RAM, so that's okay. So nearly finished on this rendering here. That's pretty quick. That only took a couple of minutes, 3 minutes or so per image, which for this size of image, you know, is unheard of in the old days, when little renderings might take hours or days. So we've moved on to image 3. I really like this shot. This is a lovely shot with a lovely bit of foreground. It really kind of sets the building off in its context and landscape. So we're going to kind of like round off the tutorial part of this, my very first tutorial with Vectorworks and Lumion. I hope you've enjoyed watching this so far, and do remember that we can keep updating the Vectorworks model and just keep resyncing it with the Lumion. So I'll do a bit more on that in a new tutorial another time, but just sit back and relax now and watch my final output that I've put together with a few video clips and some of the image stills. I hope you've enjoyed this. Please remember to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.